Here is Brookings, Norm Eisen's shop, deeply intelligence-linked, but the most prestigious think tank in the United States of America. USAID's public-private partnerships, business engagement, how USAID serves as the investment facilitator for American businesses. Organizations most frequently participating in USAID public-private partnerships as resource partners. Do you know any of these names? Save the Children. This is the CIA child vaccine program. Save the Children. This is Save the Children, when the CIA ran the fake hepatitis B vaccine drive in Pakistan. In fact, it's great. If you look at the history of this Save the Children thing, it was so funny. So basically, the CIA tapped USAID to go to one of their fundees, Save the Children, to recruit doctors to deliver vaccines, but steal everyone's blood to collect the biometrics of the population in Pakistan. I've been meaning to talk about this in a deeper way. This is the official story. He led the CIA to bin Laden and unwittingly fueled a vaccine backlash. This is in the Pulitzer Center. Dr. Shakil Afridi. It remains unclear if Afridi knew he was working for the CIA when he led a hepatitis B vaccine campaign. The exposure of the CIA's role in the vaccination effort landed Afridi in a Pakistani prison, and health officials say have become a major setback in the effort to vaccinate Pakistanis against polio. Health specialists say the suspicion, anger, and violence that some Pakistanis and Taliban militants directed healthcare workers after news leaked about the CIA-orchestrated vaccination campaign. National Geographic examined previously classified documents on Afridi's role in the CIA vaccination program. The Good Doctor graduated from Khyber Medical College in Peshawar in 1990. He was a senior health official along the mountainous Afghan border, where Taliban and Al-Qaeda fighters found a stronghold among fiercely independent Pashtun tribes. In 2008, Afridi, who had become a part owner of a private clinic. By late 2009, Afridi returned to Pakistan, where he attended a health seminar for health officers and coordinators hosted by Save the Children. This same Save the Children. They probably got two for it. It was probably a Pfizer vaccine that the CIA was using for Save the Children. Both USAID corporate partners. An international charity dedicated to children's health issues, which had been in Pakistan for more than 30 years. The United States Agency for International Development had partnered with Save the Children to inoculate children against various diseases throughout Pakistan. Afridi claims he was approached by an Australian from Save the Children, who then introduced him to Kate, an American woman who operated USAID's vaccine campaigns in the tribal region. When the Good Doctor was arrested, he told his interrogators that he thought he was being recruited by USAID. He didn't know he was being recruited by the CIA. He should have watched these streams. Guys, this doctor is still in prison. We could have saved his life. Hey, buddy, USAID is just the CIA. Of course, you were being recruited by the CIA. You were being recruited by USAID. What the hell did you think you were doing? You thought this was a charity? Mike, do you know Jill Biden was on the board of Save the Children? No. I did not know that. Thank you, Kimmy B. Yeah, 23andMe collecting data as well. Yep. So was Ghislaine Maxwell's companies. So Kate, who again, Kate is the American woman running USAID's vaccine campaigns. According to the doctor, after his house is raided and he's being tortured by Pakistani intelligence, Kate from USAID, but really from the CIA. But the doctor might not know that. Kate asked the doctor to launch a hepatitis B vaccination campaign. At the time, the ploy of staging a vaccination campaign to gain entry to the compound might have seemed risk-free. The decision to enlist Afridi was probably made by the CIA station chief in Islamabad and passed on to the Counterterrorism Center back in Langley. Afridi told Pakistani investigators that his payment of 1.3 million rupees was directed to his personal bank account. See, that's where they fucked up. That's how they got caught. Today, they would just run this through a stablecoin in a private wallet, so you can evade the Pakistani counterintelligence services. That was not unusual. In many developing nations, aid agencies use a variety of roundabout bookkeeping methods to circumvent bureaucracies. Oh, they're going to be using a lot of roundabout bookkeeping methods with Tether and Circle and the stablecoin deluge that's coming. Roundabout bookkeeping methods. What a cute little, like, Enron apologia turn of phrase. Look, IRS, I was just trying to copy USAID. Roundabout bookkeeping methods. 5 from I Am Dane. I brought up in office hours already, but it still strikes me that biometric data collection was possibly why the Theranos board was stacked with intel military brass. Yeah, you bet your ass. You bet your ass it was. In fact, do you remember? Do you remember that night in September? USAID held lessons in leadership with Elizabeth Holmes, the head of Theranos. So while USAID was explicitly working with the Central Intelligence Agency to run a fake vaccine clinic to collect biometrics, USAID partners with Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. What the fuck do you think their interest in her company is? They're doing identity intelligence. Identity intelligence is a strategic approach to leveraging data analytics and technology. Well, it's actually to dox people, basically. This is from the U.S. military. Identity intelligence contributes to multi-domain operations. Army intelligence is a capability to identify foreign persons of military interests. Like they said, Osama bin Laden. Driving collections, evaluating, and analyzing identity and biometric match information. So it doesn't matter if they have a fake passport. We got your eyeballs. Doesn't matter if they show up to a hospital in a fake name. We got your blood. We know it was you. I know it was you, Fredo. The youngest self-made female billionaire. But more unusual than the roundabout bookkeeping methods for this CIA fake vaccine program run through USAID was the USAID director's insistence that Afridi hide in the back of her vehicle to avoid being seen with her in public whenever they drove to their meetings at a USAID warehouse. Are you sure you meant AID, not CIA? Hey, Kate, mysterious woman without a last name, representing the Children's Health Initiative for USAID, you're telling me to go around collecting the blood samples of the people I'm vaccinating. You're paying me in strange roundabout bookkeeping methods, and you insist that I hide in the back of your truck so that nobody in Pakistan knows that I'm working with the head of the child vaccine program for USAID? The CIA's plan was for the good doctor to herd out the children from the villa for vaccination. The doctor would collect the spent vaccination needles, which his handlers would then send to the CIA. To look for bin Laden, of course, not because David Petraeus said an 85% identity intelligence threshold for collecting the biometrics of 85% of Pakistan's population. You think this was the only vaccine clinic they were doing this in? You don't think they were doing this all over Pakistan? You don't think they're doing this all over Africa? You don't think they were doing this all over Latin America? Use a sucker. I just love that. You have to ride in the back of the truck so that you're not spotted with the USAID administrator when traveling to the USAID warehouse. I mean, just such a funny. This is like where they deal the drugs and the guns and USAID run it all. He's able to get a telephone number of someone who lived in the compound, which turned out to be a vital piece of information for Sue, Afridi's CIA handler. Kate and Sue. How funny is that? It's the Truman Show, you know? This is what I mean by the USAID Truman Show. You go to some USAID event. Oh, I'm really interested in biometric monitoring. I'm a pharma rep. Let me go check out this USAID. Next thing you know, you got 12 new friends that you met at this USAID conference. They're calling you all the time. They're inviting you to things. They're giving you, business deals and introducing you to donors. And these are my new good friends. Let's see. One works for USAID. Another works for the World Bank. Another works for an NGO called the National Endowment for Democracy. Another one works for the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Another one works for the U.S. Institute of Peace. Man, all my friends are just great philanthropists. They love saving lives. They just love saving the children. Amazing. He's making all these friends. Kate, Sue. They just love my work. Saeed Shah, a Pakistani journalist reporting for the McClatchy news chain, first broke the story of the CIA's use of the vaccination program. The U.S. administration tried to stop me from publishing the story, both the CIA and the State Department, by approaching my editors at McClatchy, and also by appealing to me directly by telling me that it would put Afridi's life at risk. Shah told PolitiFact. Save the Children was then expelled out of Pakistan. So you get the scoop because your buddy in the Pakistani government is like, you're not going to believe this shit. Our boys are interrogating this doctor. He was collecting our blood, dog. Our blood? Our blood, dog. Yeah, we'll give you everything. Write it up. Okay, I work for an American newspaper. I have a First Amendment free speech right. Submit the draft. Oh, this thing's going to be viral, baby. We're going to be Instagram famous. You get a call from your boss, the editor. Hey, Saeed. I just got a call from the Central Intelligence Agency. They told me not to write this story. Not to publish it. And I got a second call from the State Department. Good on this guy. The balls. Brass balls. It's very similar. It's quite similar to what we saw in the Tucker Carlson thing. So this guy writes Princes of the Yen about the central banks, particularly about what was happening in Japan in the late 1980s. There's a good documentary about this, Princes of the Yen. But he wrote that book. I'm just going to play a little bit of it. But you'll see it says here, the book that exposed central banks and the CIA tried to bury.
Published only in Japanese, at least.
Yes.
First. And it, as I said at the outset, rockets to the top of the bestseller list in Japan, beating Harry Potter, which is amazing. And then what happens?
Yes, what happened next?
Well, why haven't I read this book, and why is it not on our bestseller list?
Well, yeah, What happened next was, of course, in Japan, I was constantly being interviewed. I was by the daily press, by the weekly magazines, by the monthly magazines. I was given monthly columns. I was writing for years, every month in the Japanese Economist, and the Japanese Newsweek. I was on their television. There's some
in Japanese.
Yeah, it's all in Japanese. There was some big live shows.
So your Japanese is good enough to explain economics on TV.
もちろん経済はもちろん説明できるんですよ。
I wonder how many of our viewers will know what you're saying. That's impressive.
And so, but it was all in Japanese, so it was, in the media. There was some way you could see there's some pressure being applied, some high profile live Sunday TV shows like canceled on the day. And then the senior executives inviting me around, embarrassed to try to explain. And, the Japanese love the truth. So they did tell me the truth. Well, sorry, we had no choice. You see, our advertisers, the advertising revenue is very important. And it was it was our biggest advertiser and told us Richard Werner can't be on this show. So you mean a company like Toyota, Canon or something? Yeah, I can't say the name, but a company like that. Well, hang on. They have nothing against me. I have nothing against them. Why would they say that? Yeah, of course it's not them. And they also said that they have nothing against you, and we're all really sorry about this. But, is their bank saying that they have to say this? But hang on, I don't even criticize the banks because I show that it was the central. Well, yeah, you see, the bank had to say that because the central bank asked it to do so. So that's the chain of command, And so then I was cancelled in that show, or some magazine editions even. There was one,
I'm going to come back to this, but I want to just play the CI part.
And then, a few months later, I got the call from the US Embassy.
The State Department. The same way that the guy who wrote this story in 2014 of the CIA's fake vaccination campaign ran through USAID got a call from the CIA and the State Department. Just noting that. So the State Department reaches out to him.
It was, clearly a Japanese lady working there, very polite, as you'd expect. Professor Werner, we have a request from the US State Department. It's like, okay. There's a senior person from the State Department who wants to arrange a meeting with you. Well, I guess that's in Washington. I have no plans to go to Washington at the moment. Sorry. No, he's coming to Tokyo to see you. So I thought, okay, let's meet in a public place as opposed to a dark alley.
You don't want to meet in a building with a window or a balcony that's 7 stories or taller, I'll tell you that.
And sure enough, when we met, the main message was, the CIA is watching you. That was the message. That was the main message. It's like there's no quizzing or trying to manipulate me or get me. It's just the CIA is watching now what you're doing.
They weren't trying to learn from you. They were trying to tell you something.
No. Actually, somebody suggested when I told them the story that also was my opportunity to ask for something, like, be president of one of the Federal Reserve banks in the US as part of the deal to stop talking about credit creation. Actually, it reminds me, I need to finish another story I started,
Are you starting to understand now? Are you starting to understand why only the second ever head of the National Endowment for Democracy in its 40-year history was the guy who was the head of censorship for the Atlantic Council? But what ends up happening here is you have this phenomenon where media is control of elections, it's control of policy, it's control of hearts and minds, it's control of war posture, which is why a third of the CIA's budget was spent on control over media. Look at this, by the way. Save the Children lacked the internal mechanisms to detect that it had been infiltrated by the CIA. And again, this is USAID's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Their 11th biggest global partner. We just didn't know that we were infiltrated by the CIA. It's both Sue and Kate. You knew you were infiltrated by USAID, didn't you, Save the Children? You're funded by USAID. You're one of USAID's biggest global partners. Do you not know what USAID is? The CIA has strict regulations that prohibit it from using American companies and entities as fronts. It must seek the company's consent before it places an agent in their midst. But no such restrictions apply to foreign companies. So you don't need sign-off from somebody in the company, from corporate, from the suits. But still, this is what we talked about in office hours this week. The Pakistani branch of Save the Children was actually run by a U.S. office. Oh, huh. The CIA pledges that we will no longer exploit DNA in CIA programs. That was 2014. They swore it off. 2015, USAID is doing it. USAID didn't swear it off.